45 years ago, 20 million Americans participated in the very first Earth Day. Around the U.S., people gathered for a day for serious discussion of environmental problems. The idea came from a casual suggestion by then U.S. Senator Gaylord Nelson of Wisconsin. After seeing the damage from a 1969 oil spill in Santa Barbara, California, Nelson organized a national teach-in focused on educating the public about the environment. Well, today, more than 1 billion people in 192 countries will participate in Earth Day activities and events, making it the largest civic observance in the world. A group of leading scientists and economists known as the Earth League call on world leaders to keep their commitments to avoid global warming. That group warns 75% of known fossil fuel reserves must be kept in the ground if humanity is to avoid the worst effects of climate change. U.S. President Barack Obama underlined the need to address climate change in his weekly video address last weekend.
This is an issue that's bigger and longer lasting than my presidency. It's about protecting our God-given natural wonders and the good jobs that rely on them.
Today, the green economy and the jobs that come with it are thriving. According to Ethical Markets Media, more than $6.2 trillion has been invested globally in the green economy since 2007. Tim Nash is the Senior Advisor and Director of Sustainability Research for Ethical Markets Media. Great to have you here.
Thanks so much.
So just put that in $6 trillion. It sounds like a big number. It is a big number.
Yeah.
How is it growing? In other words, that's since 2007. I'm going to guess it's pretty much loaded towards the last couple of years.
Yeah, so our first report in 2010, which looked at about 3 years, only had about $1.6 trillion. So a lot of the money has come more recently in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Every sector's been growing a little bit differently. Renewable energy is up about 25% over last year. Green construction is probably in double digits as well. And then water infrastructure is something that's been growing a little more steadily, but at about 6% annually, but all the way along since it started.
And what are the countries that lead the way on this? I mean, am I right to think it'll be the biggest Western kind of diversified economies?
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of sheer dollar size, that's true. But we really are seeing a lot of growth in developing countries as well. Most noticeably, I would say India.
Yeah.
Prime Minister Modi was in town recently, and they're going full on towards solar. Really seeing a lot of developments there. One of the interesting companies that came up in my research is a company called India Coal, which obviously is a large coal company,
yep.
and they're now investing $1 billion in solar projects in India.
We obviously we had that letter from a group of scientists, including some of the best known names in the world, and Jeffrey Sachs, incidentally, was on that list. So, you know, renowned fighter of poverty. 75% of the reserves we know about need to stay in the ground if we're going to fight climate change. The answer that you'll get, and it's a rational one, I think we had it on the show on Monday, is that's all well and good to say, but we don't have the renewables. We don't have the option to turn off fossil fuels. How, just kind of portray what this $6 trillion means. Are we on the way to getting somewhere where we actually could realistically say, yes, we can use renewables?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's going to be a combination of things. There's not going to be one silver bullet when it comes to this solution. So it's really going to be all kinds of different technologies working together to be able to get us off of fossil fuels. And I mean, the biggest message that I have is that we can simply use less. Simply by improving energy efficiency and reducing waste. I mean, that's the biggest bottom line benefit. That's going to be the most profitable, and it's going to be the best for our economy.
It's funny, you know, you watch shows like Mad Men, and they go for a picnic, and when they're finished, they just toss their trash aside and leave it there. That wasn't that long ago. We littered in my lifetime. Now it would be unthinkable. Would you put kind of the understanding of climate change, use of fossil fuels in that category? I mean, will there be kind of a moment where we look back to now and say, what were we thinking?
Definitely. And I mean, I see it more in terms of an economic transition. So I look at it in the same way that the Industrial Revolution changed everything. The idea more recently that the internet changed everything. In this way, sustainability is changing everything. This affects every single sector of the economy, and I think it's really important for us as a global economy to recognize the opportunities and be leading the path forward. So
it's a little bit paradoxical, but government support of renewables in some ways messed up the entrance of the private sector. In other words, there's lots of subsidies in the mix, and does it actually thwart, well, maybe you tell me if you think that's even true. I mean, I would say it might thwart the private sector's ability to kind of measure these investments on their face value. Yeah,
I mean, I would say that I think just about every sector receives subsidies. And when we look at the global subsidies to fossil fuel industry, it's about 6 times that renewable energies receive. So, you know, from my perspective, it's the type of thing where I'd actually say that government has been lagging in this industry.
Yep.
And I'm seeing private investors, people like Warren Buffett, companies like Apple, Nike, all kinds of major corporations really stepping up. There are some governments that are more progressive in this area and certainly treating it like an infant industry that they see is going to be growing. But I'm actually really excited about what the private sector is doing.
Where's the money going? Of the $6 trillion, is it mostly focused on kind of the infrastructure on renewables? Is it, when we talk about green investing, where does it go?
Yeah. So really got it broken down into 5 different categories. So renewable energy is still by far the largest at about $2.8 trillion. From there, I've got energy efficiency at about $1.5 trillion. And then we've got green construction, which is also quite large. A new category that we're starting to measure is called life systems. And these are investments in systems that actually generate life. So water infrastructure would fall under that category. We've got land and water remediation falling under that category. And even e-learning, which we see as investments in human capital. Humans are life too. And then finally, the last category we've got is research and development. And we're seeing a lot of advancements, a lot of investments in that area as well.
All right, Tim, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Tim Nash is a Senior Advisor and Director of Sustainability Research for Ethical Markets Media. Still ahead.